Hello, Malika here, host and producer of Feel Good, the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. This one on loving you, boo. No, that's not what I'm calling it, but you get the point. So often, people are like, just love yourself. And it's a broad stroke. And it's like, well, what does that really even mean? What does that look like? And so we aim to tackle that here. Many people talk about loving themselves in the form of self-care, taking care of their bodies, going to the spa, getting your nails done, having your fade tight. But there's so much more to it than that. My guest, Kristy Villa, talks about her intentional journey of self-love over the last 10 years. And we talk about what is loving yourself and the different forms it can take, how you know if you love yourself, and if there's opportunities, which we all have, to deepen our love for ourselves, how she got started and where to start. And then lastly, we talk about the benefits of loving yourself and the changes that she has witnessed in her own life as she's improved her relationship with herself. Enjoy the conversation, and if you feel inspired, if you get some benefit from it, please share, subscribe, repost, tell your friends about us, and check us out at our new website. We'll have some new cool things as we grow and expand that can be found at thefeelgoodinstitute.com. Thanks again, and enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining us. You are listening to Feel Good, the podcast. I'm your host, Malika Lee. Today, it's all about love, specifically self-love. My guest today, Kristy Villa, says and believes that authentic self-love and acceptance is the key to success and fulfillment. Kristy is a soul-centered leader, artist, and a director of business development at a legal solutions company. Welcome, Kristy.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. A lot of people are like, just love yourself. And I often think, what does that really mean? Where do we begin? So I'm just wondering, where did your journey, first, before we even get to what your journey has been, how do you even define self-love?
Self-love. It is actually not really easy to define because so many
Yes.
people do have their own understanding of love. It reminds me, when you asked me that question, it reminds me of one of Oprah's interviews when she would ask her guests, like, what is God or who is God? And it was like such a hard answer,
It is.
So first of all, love for me and how I relate to it is all about acceptance. So love for another, it's accepting someone just as they are, all of the pretty parts, the, challenging parts, like everything. And so when we talk about self-love, that's what I'm referring to, loving all the parts of me. And it's authentic. It's not a superficial love, but it's like authentically loving every single part of me, even the parts that may be challenging, maybe, where I used to judge, maybe the things I would want to fix in the past. Like, accepting all of those parts inside of myself is self-love.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I didn't know that was your definition, but I'm like, okay, that's probably why I knew to invite you to be the guest on the show to talk about this topic. Because when I think of, I've been fortunate enough to experience unconditional love from another human being, and it was my grandmother. And as I started to flesh out, what was it exactly? And it was exactly what you're saying, that it was an unconditional acceptance.
That's it. And I don't know if I can share a story right now of how I came to understand it for myself.
Yes, please.
Okay. So because anybody would have asked me in the past about loving myself and self-love, I would have said, yeah, of course I love myself. And I think a lot of people today would say the same thing. Of course I love myself. I take care of myself. I earn a good living. I have a nice home. I wear nice clothes. I work out. I eat healthy. Like, of course I love myself. And so that was me. And this incident came up that really showed me how much I was not loving and accepting myself. And it was with the family dog. So my parents rescued a pit bull. And the moment we met, it was like instant love with her. I loved this dog so much. And I could feel her love back to me. Now, it was an unconditional kind of love. And my dad, comes from a different generation, old school dog trainer. And so when he was like training her as this, new dog in the home, he was kind of hard on her. Like I would call it abusive. That's what I would call it. He wouldn't call it that. And so one day I came not to their home to visit. And I'm like, where's Karma? Where's Karma? I wanted to see her. That's her name, Karma. And my mom's like, oh, they're in the backyard doing something. And so I went running back there, and my dad was punishing her. And I looked at her, she looked at me, and like she wanted to be rescued. And I was like, oh my God, this is so awful. I ran back in the house, and I was just like in such upset and tears. And I had learned enough in the school I was in at the time to know, which was a transformational school, to know that if there was something that was upsetting me, it was really something more about something in myself and not what I was actually seeing out in the world. And so I was really in the self inquiry of why that was so upsetting to me. And I was like really looking at it and like, gosh, was I ever treated like that? Did dad ever treat me that way? And I couldn't find any memories of him doing anything like that to me. And so I let it go in the moment. And then later that night, I set an intention for, some clarity around this upset because I was still feeling it. And in the middle of the night, it was like this, light goes on, ding, 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 here it is. What I came to was that is how I treat myself. The way he was abusing her, in my opinion, abuse. That's how I treat myself when I make mistakes. I beat myself up. Whenever something doesn't go right, or I judge that I've made some horrible mistake or some failure, like I was so mean and cruel to myself. And the dialogue inside was like, oh, you're so stupid, Kristy. Oh, you're so disappointing. You're so ugly. You're disgusting. Like whatever it is, those judgments were inside of me, like deep inside of me. I, on the surface, wouldn't have never, called those to mind. But this incident reminded me of this is how I treat myself. I beat myself up. And it was like when I did more inquiry, I could even feel myself like whipping myself, whenever I made a mistake. And so that is what started me on this journey of loving myself in an authentic way, unconditional way, and accepting all of the parts inside of me, especially the ones I had previously judged. Like if I was carrying extra weight or if I made a mistake, I was consciously choosing to, whenever I would start to hear the negative self-talk, stop myself in the moment and be like, no, it's okay. I love you, Kristy. I love you. You're okay.
How long ago was that?
Gosh, okay. So that incident, I was either in my first or second year at the University of Santa Monica. So that was like 2011 or 12.
Okay, so almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yes. Okay. That sounds about right. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're having fun. Exactly. That is very true on this journey of, self awareness, self exploration, and self love. Life does get really fun. It gets way more fun than what I used to experience.
Okay,
In
so
all
let's.
areas. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. You said, what was the last part of your
In
sentence?
all areas of
In
my
all
life.
areas.
Yeah.
And so you brought up something that I want to just jump into and touch lightly, which is the concept that we also introduce and follow with Feel Good, the movement about, and it's on built upon Gandhi's quote, be the
Mhm.
change you want to see in the world, meaning doing your own work. And then that does change the world. And
Huge.
you
That's
mentioned
huge.
that as well when you said about seeing your dad and knowing that you're upset. Can you just explain for some people who aren't familiar with that concept what that means?
Yeah, well, that's right. So what well, it's a kind of bigger explanation, but I'll try to keep it like short
Okay.
for myself. Um, so it's how I relate to the world. How I see the world is how I'm relating to myself inside. So if I'm experiencing upset in the world, anger in the world, any kind of disturbance out in the world, that's my clue to go inside and look for what's disturbed inside of me. What part of um, my aspects, my personality, my inner child are upset in that moment? What's being triggered? Because everything that and this goes along with the conversation of self-love too. The more loving I am with myself inside, the more loving I experience outside of myself.
So what if somebody were to say, listening to this conversation, I'm a loving person, but people do mean things to me all the time, or people are rude to me? What is your response to a person who thinks they're loving, but are having experiences of the world
Well,
that
first I would ask if
are back?
if they wanted if they were coachable, because I don't want to just tell them, you know, the answer to that unless they're really open and really, wanting to understand why this is happening. Because the answer is there is somewhere inside of ourselves that we are being hard on, that we are judging. If we are experiencing judgment outside of ourselves, we are judging ourselves somewhere inside. There's nothing we can be experiencing on the outside of ourselves. There's nothing we can experience on the outside world that we aren't already experiencing inside. Everything that we experience in the world is a reflection. And you might have heard this before, like it's a mirror. Everything we experience outside of us is a reflection of what is going on inside of us at some level, in some way. It may
So,
not be a direct, um, like actual actions that are
mhm.
happening inside, but it's an experience of, disapproval, anger, judgment that we are doing inside.
So someone, because we're just touching on this lightly, and getting to the self-love, which is connected but not exactly on topic, what are some things, if someone wanted to just explore this approach or philosophy further, that would be some keywords that they could look up online to learn more about that?
To learn more about the judgment or the inner awareness.
About that, kind of that same term, as above so below, as within so without, as far as their personal experience. Like one of the terms that I'm familiar with is like a psychological term called projection.
Projection, right? That's a
So,
great word.
so that might be a key word, like the psychological definition of projection. If someone wanted to look into, what you're saying in that concept a little bit more, projection and how that works would be a key word and example.
Yeah, I guess self-awareness
Mhm.
too. So that talks a lot about looking inside, right?
Mhm.
Um, hmm.
And that's okay. I think we've given them a good starting place for those that are just piqued. We piqued their curiosity as far as that philosophy if they're not familiar with it already.
Mhm.
What, so once you have this awareness about how hard you are with yourself, what were the first steps? Like, how does somebody go from that realization that maybe they don't love themselves to then starting the process? What was your process?
Yeah, so the first step really is to listen to the inner dialogue that is constantly going on inside. most people were all, in the rat race of life. We get up in the morning, we get ready, we go to work, or we get the kids ready. Like there's so much to do. We're in this busyness all of the time, and we're just going from one thing to the next. And what's happening, and this is true for everyone, through all of those actions, there is an inner dialogue happening constantly. It's mind chatter that is either agreeing with what you're doing in the moment or saying negative things about what you're doing in the moment. Like, I'm running late, oh my God, there's an inner dialogue going on. Like, oh my God, I hate when I'm late. This feels, and usually your self-judgment, you're so stupid for being late, you should have done this, whatever. But literally in everything that we're doing, there is a constant dialogue happening. So the first step is to quiet yourself and start listening to what is being said inside. Hear the words, hear the actual dialogue coming from those places inside. And usually they're fear places. So start listening to what you're saying on the inside. And then you're going to be amazed at what you actually hear, because we are programmed with so much negative self-talk. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And this idea of needing to be perfect, that really perpetuates that negative self-talk, because who is perfect, really? But we are shown that in everywhere that we look. We celebrate perfection when someone looks perfect, or accomplishments, that are perfect, or, inventions that are perfect, or whatever. We're always celebrating this idea of perfection, and no one really thinks of themselves as perfect. So it just perpetuates this inner self-dialogue of not being good enough and needing to motivate ourselves to do better. And most of the time it's with all that negative self-talk. So when you become aware of the dialogue, then you have, control over it. You have choice in the matter. You can start choosing a different dialogue. And it really takes commitment, because that dialogue inside is kind of an automatic dialogue. It's an automatic way of thinking, I guess. So we have to disrupt that pattern, and it takes a conscious effort to disrupt that pattern. And when you hear the negative self-talk, you go into the loving, you go into self-forgiveness, forgiving yourself for having the negative judgment against yourself. And then, how would you want to deal with yourself? And what really helped me was, really picturing my inner little girl, because we all have that inner young person inside of us. And would I talk to a young little girl in that way? When she, is like learning to walk, let's say, and she's falling down, scraping her knee, getting hurt, would I be yelling at her saying, "You're so stupid, get up, do it better"? I would never speak to a little girl like that, right? So I wouldn't want to speak to myself that way. And so picturing that inner little girl inside of me really helped develop a loving pattern of a loving self-talk, and being like, it's okay, Kristy, when I would make a mistake and fail, because this life is all about learning and growing. So, mistakes happen. And as opportunities for growth, I started to treat myself as that little girl who's learning to walk or learning something new, be encouraging with myself. I love you, Kristy. I love you. You're doing a great job. Or if I made a mistake and thought I was being made a fool of or something in the moment, I would laugh at it too and be like, oh my God, that's so cute. That's so cute. Look at what you did. Look what you did. It's totally cute and fine. There's nothing wrong here. There's nothing wrong. It's all good. So, building a relationship with myself in that way, where it's just this tender, loving encouragement, like I would, my little daughter. but treating myself that way. And so if we don't have little kids, pets are a great way to come into that loving, that self-love as well. So my dog, the family dog, Karma, I love her so much. Like there's literally nothing she could do. Like anything that she did, she's going to be completely loved by me. I don't care if she poops in the house. Like I wouldn't like it, right? But I'm going to love her unconditionally anyways. And so it's that, applying that kind of unconditional love and forgiveness to myself.
So I'm hearing a couple themes in there. There's patience and compassion, as well. That could also be considered characteristics of this. What you're saying is self-love. There's a couple things that came to mind as you were speaking that I wanted to just throw out there. One is that, if for those that aren't aware of that inner voice that Kristy's talking about, take a look in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, I feel like you will start hearing a dialogue about, oh my goodness, this isn't, my hair isn't, like, I think that's a great.
That's right, Malika.
Yeah.
That's so perfect. If you look in the mirror, like you'll see, like, oh, I have, what's that blemish here? What's
Right.
wrong? What's that? That's right. That gets you right into the dialogue that's actually going on constantly.
Exactly. That's an entry point. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I had this epiphany because I am a recovering perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
And during a meditation, I had this, how they say there's kind of like, let's say, a shadow side or a fear-based interpretation and a light or a love-based interpretation of things.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was shown during a meditation was that my perfectionism and thinking I had to do things right or perfect was the shadow side, and the light side of that perfection was really like being in perfect acceptance and loving of myself, is like
Mm-hmm.
the light side. So can I be perfect with my love and acceptance of me, versus thinking I have to do all these things to be quote unquote perfect? But the true perfectionism that really resonated with me was a perfectionism around being perfect in my ability to accept all those parts of myself that makes mistakes,
Mm.
which is exactly, what you spoke to.
Yeah, and that is the other thing, that when you start on this journey of listening on the inside, you will start to hear different voices come forward too. Like we have all these different aspects in ourselves. We have that inner child who always wants to be approved of. We may have the rebel teenager, who wants to buck the system. We may have the part that loves, desire and loves to be fulfilled in those ways. We have the one who wants to accomplish. We have all of these different aspects in ourselves, and they come forward at different times, and there's different ways that they want to guide our life and judge what we're doing on the outside. And the key to that is to, love it all, love all of those aspects. So even the part that, we would outwardly judge as negative, that we wouldn't approve of, love that part, love it. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong ever. And when we can let go of that, there is a right way and a wrong way, that's where it really clears the path for self-love. There's no right way to go through this life. There's no wrong way to go through this life. There's no right or wrong. It's all about choices and acceptance. Now, as we learn what we enjoy and what we like to experience in life, we make choices that are in alignment with that. And it feels good on the inside when we make choices that take us down some negative experience. Some would call that wrong, but that's still not wrong. We're just having to acknowledge that we made a choice that took us down this experience that maybe hurt. And that's okay. We can make a new choice in the next moment. It's
So I'm
all,
curious,
yeah, go ahead.
because you've been on this path now of loving yourself, and the entry point was listening to how you speak to yourself, right? And that mental chatter that's going on. How has it evolved over time? What are some of the other ways now that you incorporate self-love?
Yeah, a big part, and I'm glad you brought up the mirror, a big part is mirror work.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the morning, um, well, anytime I come across a mirror now, but I started with just in the morning when I'm getting ready, looking myself in the eyes in the mirror and loving myself, saying, I love you, Kristy. I love you. You're amazing. You're perfect just the way you are. You are worthy no matter what. What do you want to experience today? But really looking myself in the eyes. It's easy for me to do now, and I do it every time I am in front of a mirror. I look in my eyes and tell myself I love me.
Mm-hmm.
But at first, it can be challenging to look yourself in the eye with just love.
Yes, I
So
really get that.
yeah, so it takes practice, and I would just add it to my morning routine of getting ready, brushing my teeth, taking a shower, and
Right.
then
So it's like an
looking.
affirmation, like affirmations.
Yeah, affirmations. Um, but you can also have like a loving conversation, with yourself, just
Mhm.
looking yourself in the eyes, loving and appreciating. Now, when you first do it, negative self-talk is going to come up, just like you had mentioned the mirror before, and you're going to start seeing everything that is imperfect, in the mirror.
Right.
But that's great because you're hearing the inner dialogue at that point, and you can have mastery over that and start with the loving, positive self-talk. It takes practice. This doesn't happen, after one or two times. It takes practice. It's like, like, this is a kind of a good example. Like, you have let's say you have a glass of cranberry juice. Okay. And the cranberry juice is all of the negative self-talk. And the positive, loving self talk would be clear water. So, how would you change that glass of cranberry juice into clear water?
Yeah, you keep adding water to it.
Right. So, it's not just a drop here, a drop there. I say I love you one time in the mirror, that's a drop, that's a drop. It actually takes, putting the glass under the faucet where there's just a constant downpour of that clear water, which would be the loving, positive self talk, like it's constant. And then eventually it turns pink. And then eventually the glass is full of that clear water, or that practice of my inner dialogue now goes automatically into loving self talk.
Mm. Yeah, because you've been pouring water over time into that glass, to use your analogy.
Yep,
So
absolutely right.
a lot of people equate self-love with like taking care of their bodies, right? Getting their nails done, getting a massage. You haven't touched on any of that stuff. How does that fit into your self-love practice, or does it?
I mean, it definitely can be defined that way as self love. And I think that is the part that everybody kind of knows already. That's the part that, like, oh, I'm going to start loving myself. I'll go get my nails done, or I'll go get a massage. Yes, those are loving acts for yourself. And that's not really the topic that I am focusing on for people to awaken to and acknowledge. I am actually really pointing people to that inner self awareness of how they treat themselves on the inside. Because as you learn how to really unconditionally love all of the thoughts and judgments and pieces on the inside that you would have called negative in the past, as you learn to love all of those things on the inside, that outer stuff takes care of itself. Like it's automatic. It's automatic that you start treating yourself more lovingly, that you want to do things for yourself that are more loving.
You know, it's coming up for me to share that my journey on self-love, one of the aspects of it, in addition, everything that you said, I definitely that has been part for my course as well. But I think the other element for me that has really deepened is my choice and patience with my emotions.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And
Mm-hmm.
so really welcoming and allowing space for, like, if sadness comes up, even if I don't even understand, you know, the source of the sadness, but just giving myself space and acknowledgement of that sadness.
And loving it.
Yes.
That's the piece there, loving it. Like, so like when sadness comes up for me, and sometimes it is like, I don't know where this is coming from, I'm feeling really sad right now.
Hmm.
Is like scooping up that little girl inside of me, giving her a big giant hug and saying, it's okay, you can be sad, it's
Hmm.
okay, kissing her, on the forehead, and also reminding her that I've got her. She
Hmm.
is held and she is loved always. And
Yes.
even the anger parts, when I get pissed off at something that has happened, it's like, same with that part of me that's pissed off in the moment, grabbing that part and being like, it's okay. I love you. I love you, pissed off part. You are totally fine. You are fine. And you are held and loved always.
So this comes back to, let's say, this experience with your dad. You know, some things that you're saying is what people critiqued Mr. Rogers for, you know, reinforcing that love. And so if, let's, going back to Karma, if your dad would have just hugged, you know, Karma when she did something like pooped in the house, or, you know, while he's training her, the question some people may have listening to us was, then how will we learn, right? If we always hug a kid when they act out, then how would they learn, quote unquote, right from wrong, or improper behavior, and what's acceptable?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Do we learn from punishment? Like, is that really how we learn? I don't think so. I mean, it is a way of learning, sure,
Hmm.
but it's not the only way. Like loving acceptance of like that part. Okay, so we made the mistake. I love you, Kristy. You're okay. It's fine. What would we have chosen differently?
Oh, so
What
there
could
is some
we,
reflection. And
yeah, what could we have chosen differently in that moment?
mhm.
And it's okay. There's nothing wrong. I love you. You are held and loved always. And what could we choose in that same situation differently that would have a more favorable outcome?
Yes, I'm wondering, as I've started going through my journey of self-love, one of the other things that has been really interesting is treating myself the way that I'd want to be treated.
Yes.
And, you know, going to the five love languages, there's a book for those who are not familiar with it called The Five Love Languages. And the premise is that basically we recognize and are able to receive love in five different ways. And that includes words of affirmation, so like encouragement. And that's exactly what Kristy has been talking about. Physical touch is another one. Receiving gifts, you know, of thoughtfulness. Quality time, which is uninterrupted and focused, you know, time, and acts of service. So, you know, doing little things, let's say around the house or chores or things like that. And I'm wondering if you've incorporated over time some of these principles in loving yourself.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I took a whole year. So after a breakup with this guy that I was dating, um, I recognized that, the same mirror concept, what I'm experiencing on the outside of me, is a reflection of what's going on inside of me. And I didn't have a great experience in that relationship. So I wanted to do some self reflection. So I took a whole year of dating myself.
Mm.
And I used all of those love languages, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And even the physical touch, like I would like, let's say I would take myself out for a movie. I would sit there and caress my arm or my
Mm.
hand and be like really loving with myself, and I was consciously treating myself the way I wanted to be treated in a relationship. It was the most amazing experience for me, and it has called in um, much higher quality experiences in relationships since I've done that, and I continue to practice it because I know how I'm treating myself is how I will be treated in a relationship.
And if someone treats you, this is my personal experience now, for what it's worth to the listeners, take it for what it's worth. If someone's treating us better or worse than how we treat ourselves, it will not resonate. So even if it's like a great person and they're very loving, if we have an issue or don't feel worthy of that love, it won't quite be a match. Like we might sabotage it or we'll
That's
do
right. That's
things.
a fleeting experience.
Right.
Yes.
Right, because it doesn't quite line up. And I know sometimes, like for me, especially many years ago, there would be like this kind of my guard is up. Okay, what do they want?
Right, when they're being so loving.
Yeah.
Yes, I can relate to that as well from the past. Yes. Yes. Um, yeah, that's
And
right. So it is the answer to everything, Malika. The answer to everything is building that authentic self-love inside of ourselves. It will change everything we're experiencing in this world, from our careers to our relationships to our bodies, our physical health, all of it.
so let's get into some trenches with this. Like, do you do, it sounds like the mirror you mentioned, you do that every time you walk by a mirror.
Yes.
Do you have a practice around this? How is this integrated into your life, or what are some suggestions of integration for those that are listening?
I mean, I do think that the mirror work is an easy structure that everyone can put in place immediately, just to take a minute, even if it's just 1 minute, 60 seconds of, being with themselves in the mirror, listening to what thoughts are coming up first, and then consciously choosing to be loving with ourselves, have some affirmations that we want to start filling our glass with.
Mhm.
That's, I think, an easy action to take in a structure that will be very supportive. The other thing that I like to do,
Before we
oh,
what are some affirmations maybe that you've used or that come to mind? What are some examples?
yeah. I mean, I start with I love you.
Hmm.
I love you. Um, I can switch back from you because I'm looking at myself, you are worthy, or I say I am.
Yeah.
But because I'm looking at myself in the eye, most of the time I'm choosing you.
Hmm.
You are amazing. You are worthy no matter what. You are perfect just the way you are. You are enough
Hmm.
just the way you are, or I am enough, period.
Right. Right. And I think it's important that it's normal for us to say those words and not believe them right away. Was that your experience?
Yep,
Mhm.
that's right. It because you have a lifetime of the negative self-talk. So it definitely takes this reprogramming kind of thing, to get the positive self-talk on track. But at first it's going to feel fake. It will definitely feel inauthentic at first. You just you stick with it. You stick with it. And then you continue with those, positive affirmations, throughout the day when you start to hear the negative self-talk, because you will start to hear it more and more. And then you just catch it, love yourself, remind yourself of the truth, which is you are worthy, you are enough, no matter what. You are perfect just the way you are. And then it starts to be more comfortable, and then it starts to be believable.
And what's coming up for me is just like a word of caution, because one of the snaggly kind of like quicksand could be judging that we're not even loving ourselves right, when we
That's a good point. Yeah.
I just want to like put that out there of being aware of even thinking that we can not love ourselves right or do the affirmations right, or we forget for 3 days, or so there can be so much resistance to starting this practice that Kristy is talking about of love. And I'm saying this from experience. So that's why I wanted to just put it out there, like not to give up, that even your judgments of not loving yourself right or all those things, I think are pretty normal. Did you have that experience?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And so that's where I go back to reminding myself that there's no right way or wrong way to anything. It's really just, what do I want to be experiencing? If I want, because listen, Malika, like we can go on with the lives that we've been living the way we've been going and we'd be fine. We don't have to do anything differently. It's totally fine. So, and if you want a, a more expanded, more joyful, life fulfilling experience here, you're going to put practices in place. Right. And nothing is right and nothing is wrong. There's no right way or wrong way of doing it. It's just what's feeling good.
Yes, like the podcast. That's why it's called.
Yes, exactly.
On so many levels. Like that's a whole other conversation. So I love it. So I wanted to just suss out some of the first step or offering about the mirror work, and you're going to continue on with some other practices as well.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So the other thing that I do is when I am in like an emotional upset, sadness, anger, frustration, I do what's called free form writing. It's basically just getting out all of the negative thoughts on paper. I can also do it in words, like speaking as well, but I like to write it out. And, I set a positive intention to clear my body, my temple of any negativity, and then I just let it rip. Let it rip everything I'm thinking and like all the judgments and everything that I have rolling inside of me. I just let it all out. I let it all out. And I really give myself permission to just lay it all out there. And then, when I feel complete with all of that, all of those judgments, I will take that paper. I love to burn it. Sometimes I don't have
I can tell even the way you said burn it.
Yeah, burn it.
Burn it down. Now I'm thinking of Angela Bassett in Waiting to Exhale when she burned her
that's right.
She burned her husband's clothes and
all of his clothes in the driveway. Yeah. Yeah, burn the paper or just shred it and throw it away. And then I move my body to let that energy roll out of me. And then I go into the, self-forgiveness, forgiving myself for any judgments against myself, any judgments against others. And then I always finish it up with those affirmations, the truth of, I am worthy. I am enough. I am perfect just the way I am. And so is maybe there's another person involved, acknowledging the truth about them as well, that they are love, doing the best they can. So that's another practice I like to do.
That's great. Yeah, letting it go. And then there's one other follow-up question, or because one of the things that I find that has increased in my experience as I've loved myself more is really allowing myself to do things that bring me joy and that
Yeah.
I enjoy. And I think that's been part of your journey as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, yes. So and the practice that I do, I mean, so anything that brings me joy, that's the name of the game for me right now. Like life is all about playing and having fun, and how much fun can I have in this life? Um, and one of the practices that I do on a regular basis, because it really is such a loving practice, is expressive art.
Hmm.
So I have worked with a healer. I'll call her a healer, who does this expressive art therapy, where we, start with a meditation, and we get into ourselves, and like, is there a physical pain in our bodies or an emotional pain going on? And we get in touch with that feeling on the inside, and then we create art from that space. And it's such a loving experience. So we create the art from there, and then we sit and journal with the art. And all of these things, all of these practices are really just designed to get us inside of ourselves,
Mhm.
right? And present to any negative things that are going on, and then getting present to the love. So I create art with that process, and that brings me so much joy, but it is also a clearing experience of any negativity inside of myself.
Mhm.
And then the last thing I would say is meditation. Meditation is a key practice to all of this, because quieting, oneself down, and getting present in the moment is, how we get leverage over the automatic negative thinking that has been going on for years. So practice of meditation is a key here. And even if it's just for 2 minutes a day, that can grow over time, that that piece is key.
Yeah. When you said that, for some reason, what came up for me, which is interesting, and maybe this was the foundation of self love, was self respect and like being able to keep my word to myself.
Mm.
And so, even when you're saying about 2 minutes a day, or, I think that that was an area that I also had judgments about. And it's common, right? That's why we have accountability partners, that somehow just by sharing it with someone else, we are more committed to keeping our word than if
It's
we
true.
just have that conversation within ourselves and no one else knows technically about it. And so when you're saying even that those 2 minutes, like it's just such a wonderful, it just opened up in my mind like my own journey around this, and how interesting it is, and how tempting it is to go back into that judgment even when we're trying to make improvements, and that the opportunity even for being kind, even if we don't keep our words to ourselves and how we want to express our love, or because it can be so gnarly, it can, it's like quicksand sometimes.
That's true. That's a good point. So it's like, I think it's just so that brings me to this other point, that because it's true, it can be a quicksand, right? Like you get caught up in it, and then you're like, whoo, getting pulled down, right?
Right.
So I guess the last piece to this for me is, in this world, in this life, there's only one of two places you can ever exist and operate from. And that's either from fear, which is where most people are, and that's what generates the negative self talk, the judgments outside of ourselves, the despair, all of that is in the fear place. And then there's the love, the loving, the joy. Those are, you can only be in fear or in joy,
Mhm.
love. So I like to think about it in that way, because when I am in a dark place and I have the choice to start doing these practices or not, and just letting myself sit in the dark place, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing right or wrong. I can totally do that. But I look at it as that choice. Do I want to be in the fear, which is where I am right now, or do I want to be in the love, which is where anything is possible and joy abounds?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to, as we wrap up our conversation today, you mentioned in response to my first question about what's going on inside is reflected back to us by what we see outside. And so can you just share with us and the listeners what has changed as you've been on this course now? What have you now started seeing outside because your insides have changed?
Mm, where do I begin? Well, I guess so. What would you say are the main parts of this human experience right now? That you would say career is one, health is another,
Family,
family, and then partnership, maybe.
right?
Okay,
Friends, like our social community, which has definitely changed form and everything with COVID, right?
that's changed a lot. Yeah. Well, we'll just start with
Money's
yeah,
another.
money, abundance. Okay, so career and money, I'll lump those two together. I used to experience my career, um, as a burden. I was a workaholic. I was exhausted all the time. I was constantly trying to prove myself and accomplish and accomplish and accomplish and accomplish to feel good. And as no matter how much I accomplished, I never felt good. Because I was missing this piece of self love. So, as I have been on this journey of authentic self love, my career experience has completely transformed. I'm in the same career that I've always had. And I find so much joy doing the same job. And the business is just flowing. It's flowing. I don't have to work hard and kill myself as I was as a workaholic to earn the same money. I'm even earning more money in this. I have all this space to create and love my job, love my clients, love myself. And so the exhaustion and, workaholic thing has just fallen away.
Mm,
And then obviously the abundance is flowing because the love is flowing. So that is, money is energy.
mm-hmm.
So that goes hand in hand. And then with my body, my health, I was always so hard on myself because I've always carried this extra weight, and I used to carry a lot of extra weight. Now I feel the healthiest I've ever felt in my life. I'm still carrying extra weight. I'm okay with it though because my body feels so good. And
Mm,
I walk, 2 or 3 miles every day. I do yoga every day. I'm eating a lot healthier and it's just automatic. It's in the past, I would force myself to exercise. I would force myself to eat right. And doing it kicking and screaming the whole way. Like it was always this againstness feeling and forcing myself to do something to be healthy. And now it's not that at all. It is just like this. I love walking because my body feels so good. I love yoga because it stretches and it feels so good. I love eating healthy because my body feels so good. It's a loving relationship with all of that. So I don't diet and I don't have these um, you know, crazy exercise schedules. However, I exercise every day. It's just part of what I do because I'm enjoying my body here
mm-hmm.
on this earth. And then with my family, oh my gosh, I love my family so much. And I've come in I mean, I've always had a great family. Like I would say that I always had kind of a good relationship with my family. But there was always like this, I have to be a good little girl. My dad was a very, strict kind of domineering father type. Um, and my mom, she has her things and like we all do, we have, some judgments about how we were raised, right? Like, mom, I'm this way because mom did this, or I'm this way because dad did this, or they didn't do this, or, whatever. All of that is gone. There aren't any judgments about how I was raised. Like, I just see my parents as like, they did the best they could with what they had. I'm in full acceptance of them and how they show up in the world with all of their quirks and tendencies, because we all have them. And we just have the best relationship now. And I feel that way with all of my family, like my sister, her husband, her children. Like, it's just all about accepting. There's no judgment present. And it's always fun for me. It's just a fun experience with them. Romantic partnership. I'm not in a relationship right now, and that is something I am creating for myself because I love that experience. What I can say is that the quality of men, like how they show up in the world, has gotten better and better, or I'm not sure how to say that without sounding like there's a judgment against any kind of man, because there isn't. It's just that my experience with loving partnership has grown. Like, I'm having more excitement and thrilling experiences with men in this place of, self-love and acceptance inside of myself. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So we'll see, who ends up, being my partner. I'm excited about that possibility. Yeah.
Wow. And I'm impressed because, the COVID thing, that we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but, I know that for a lot of us, myself included, that things have changed so much. And it's like, wow, I'm not even connecting with people I know. How am I going to connect with people I haven't met yet or don't know? So to hear you say that you're having a great time with it is inspiring. Like, okay, there's got to be some ways to do it safely and to still, meet new people. So I'll keep that in my back pocket from
right. We could talk. I guess that's a topic for another day.
Exactly.
There's a lot for me to share with that last statement, but yeah.
Yes. All right. And, as we wrap up, you've covered how your life has changed now that you've changed. Is there any words of wisdom or anything else that has been left unsaid that you just want to offer before we wrap up today?
I just want to say that life is amazing. This human life experience is so awesome. And the best part about it is that we each get to create how we want to live this life. We are the master creators. And if we want to have that loving experience, it just all starts inside ourselves. And you literally can have everything you want from there.
Well, you've heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Feel Good, the podcast, with our guest today, Kristy Villa. I was talking all about how to take it from a concept of what it is to love yourself to, tangible practices that you can do every day, and why it's important to take time to love yourself. And until the next time, be good to yourself, love yourself, take time to do things you love, and don't forget, keep feeling good. A big, huge thank you to Kristy Villa, my guest today, taking us on the path of loving herself specifically. If you start practicing some of these things that Kristy has shared with us or that we talk about in this conversation, we'd love to hear from you and your journey on that path. So please comment, subscribe, share this with your friends. You can find me on Instagram at Ms. Malika Lee. And again, our new website with new and upcoming things on thefeelgoodinstitute.com. Until the next time, many blessings and much love.